Hi, this is Frantz Kantor, cartoonist, illustrator, and toon talker. And I'm here at the Australian Cartoon Museum and practicing social distancing on Mother's Day. I'm here with my mother. What's your name?
Mrs. Bridges.
Yeah, Jim Bridges, the president of the Australian Cartoon Museum. So this is me, and we're going to do another drawing today. We're going to do a caricature. I wonder if you can guess who this is. I've been trying to work out some sort of a distinctive purpose, some shapes, looking at foreseeing some problems and things.
To draw or not to draw?
Yeah, so we're doing this guy. We're doing
Billy.
Shakespeare.
Doing Billy.
Yeah, so, there aren't any photographs, obviously, of William Shakespeare, and we're not sure about the accuracy of the paintings, but it seems to be in a consensus that this is obviously a waxworks of Will Shakespeare. Keep an eye on the expression, right? So that's the thing that we're going to look at. That expression is based on this painting. You can see the ring there, the pirate ear, R, is clearly visible. Come on.
Shakespeare was a pirate.
Well, actually, in that time, they did speak like pirates. That's where pirate language came from. When Robert Newton devised the pirate talk for... no, it's generally accepted. That's how they talk. That's how they spoke.
Because Robert Newton, the greatest pirate of them all, by the way, he was in the Disney version of Treasure Island.
Yeah.
I thought all those rolling R's was because he was a drunk.
No.
And he used to rattle because of all the bottles on his person.
So, well, he was in character. So anyway, this is like a version of this. This is a painting, and these
actually
images.
That's the portrait that I just like because it's so iconic. The other one.
That one.
No, that one. No, the other way.
That one.
No, the other way. The one that was on.
This was probably one of the first ones. You can see it's kind of how incredibly decorative.
That was
it is.
published on his works.
Yeah. So it's got this dots that look like money. So it looks like it's an etching that was like a copper plate print or something like this.
Yeah.
So it's quite a detailed drawing. Thing to note, though, there's a subtle expression in here. And look at the shape of the nose and the shape of the lips, right? So that's where this painting came from. So there's actually a little bit of annoyance coming into the expression of the eyes over here.
Yeah.
But the nose is very, very distinctive. It has a very distinctive shape, so we're going to explore that. There's also this little baby lips he's got here, which they try to fix up a little bit with this expression, with this painting, And then, of course, this waxworks comes from all of those expressions, all of those paintings put together and made a sort of a more normal kind of beard, whereas the beards here was very, very fine hair, but the beard from this one is non-existent. So this is more like a Dutch style painting. It's a Dutch style fashion. And you could see the collar here. Everything is very, very decorative. It's not very realistic, but that was the style at the time, and especially for this technique, which is this etching. So it kind of gave it a very formal folk art sort of feel. And as I said, it looks like money, so they could reproduce this over and over and over again and sell them. That was the idea. It was for printing. The early days of printing. So I've taken this idea, this thumbnail, and I've recreated a version, thinking about the face and the nose and things, which we're going to look at. Again, the lighting, as far as the lighting is concerned, we're working from the first one, and a little bit from the second one. But the lighting is going to be this sort of favoured down the top left-hand side, and the shadows would be down on the right-hand side. So everything would be in reference to that sort of effect. So, on the collar, for example, it would throw like a cast shadow down like so.
Most of the caricatures that I've seen and that I have in the museum of Shakespeare, they emphasise the brow. They make it quite large because he's brainy and he wrote all those books. And all
Yeah,
that stuff.
well, it's easy to do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a. I'm actually
Already yours is different. I can tell just by the nose.
No, I'm looking at this nose. I'm basing it on this nose, and this nose and the other one, the other painting. The other painting was obviously made from this because this is more symbolic.
And
the other painting was
you've
trying to be
already
more
got
realistic.
the sort of the change of eyes that was in the second picture.
This is very simplistic. The original painting is very sort of stylized and simplistic. So I need to add a little bit more realism to it.
Bit of juice.
So it's just sort of interpreting it differently. So you look at things and you say, well, that's a symbol of an eye, more of a symbol rather than a realistic eye, and that's fine. But so we really don't know what the hell he looks like. He's not. And if you do more research, of course, you get even more confused because then you get into the pamphlets and the woodcuts and things like that they used to do when they printed out flyers. He looked different again. So it's really you're at a kind of a loss here to discover the real Will Shakespeare. But let's talk a little bit about his work. So I actually came to like Will Shakespeare when I was in high school. I was aware of him, obviously.
What did you study? Which plays?
Macbeth and Richard III. I actually put Richard III on as a play when I was in high school.
What, you directed?
Yeah, I was Richard III.
Okay. Did you do it as the humpback sort of?
No, I wasn't.
Version?
No, I didn't know. Well, kind of, but not to any great extent. So now was the winter about discontent made glorious summer by the son of York.
And who you influenced by with your
little,
production? Did you see a film before that or anything?
Okay, well, I saw Sir Laurence Olivier as Richard III. I like that. In school, in primary school, we went to see Roman Polanski's Macbeth, which was unusual because it had newt scenes in it.
In primary school?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was unusual.
And it's also bloody.
Well, it is
bloody.
Yeah, but I loved it. It was a brilliant film, very, very moody and atmospheric. Probably, in my mind, it's up there with Chinatown. It's very, very exciting.
Well, that's a great film. Chinatown's a great film.
So as far as Roman Polanski, whatever your feelings are about Roman Polanski, he is certainly a very competent filmmaker. So, part reading the images and sort of reinterpreting them into sort of a more realistic mode. That's what I'm trying to get at here, to try to interpret these lines and create a sense of believability with their placement. Now, as far as the caricature is concerned, the exaggeration of the shapes, these are things that I can clearly see a correlation with. There is a definite shape of this nose, and it's actually a lot sharper than I've driven it here. So there is something that is common to all of the images, and that's the thing that I'm trying to accommodate in the drawing. So thinking about all the faces in general, how eyelids are supposed to be constructed and anatomically correct, which is probably it's trying to sort of correct a lot of the stylistic choices that the original artist made with this etching. So I'm sort of reinterpreting what he had to work from. I'm thinking he probably worked because this was done after Shakespeare's death, so he probably would have interviewed Shakespeare's son or grandson.
Oh, he would. He would have also
And
maybe interviewed. I don't know,
Shakespeare.
but his mates. He's the actors and the people who he worked with.
Yeah, you could probably get like a working identikit. A lot of these artists at the time, this guy in particular, there's his name, Martin Droshout, the elder. So they would have done. They didn't have newspapers at the time, but they had one-sheeters and flyers as newspapers. So they would have had court jobs as a court photographer, a court artist to draw, famous criminals of the day, notorious wife beater and drunkard.
So tell us about your production. It was part of English or?
Yeah, well, no, it was independent of English.
Well, what year was it? Like what
was
year
like
were you
first
in?
Year,
what year?
high school.
In first form,
Yeah,
you
I
did.
was 13.
You produced it.
Yeah.
Out of English.
Yeah,
So
I'll tell you. This is how. This
what's
is
the
where.
context?
All right, I was watching Hamlet, and I was a big Lost in Space fan. And to my mind, I said, "Is that Dr. Smith playing Hamlet?" And of course, it wasn't. It was Sir Laurence Olivier, but it kind of looked like him. And as I started watching, I got really interested in the rhythm of the patterns, the speech patterns, And I was very, very good at English in any case. Don't ask me to conjugate verbs or anything, but just general English studies. I was pretty good at that. I liked it. I enjoyed it. And I did read a bit of poetry. Back then it would have been like something funny like Ogden Nash, But I quite liked the rhythm of Shakespeare, and of course they're very dramatic. The stories they're talking about are all about battles and murders and duels and things that are very what's the word? It's like a English version of a Western gunfight at the OK Corral or something. You get, murders happen and kings get deposed and, like Macbeth, for example, is just like a constant, violent.
Yeah, well, I mean, they not only kill the king and his wife and his kids and their dogs and all that. They kill all the kinsmen. They try and wipe out the whole anybody who's
the whole line.
Yeah.
So the dog can't be king.
So you got into Shakespeare.
The reason why they killed dogs is because the dogs were in the chamber of the king, and they would be killed first because they would alert the king, and then the guards would come and save the king and all this sort of rigmarole.
So you got into Shakespeare via Star Trek.
Star Trek? You mean Lost in Space?
Oh, sorry, Lost in Space. Yeah, Lost in Space.
Yeah.
I remember the reason I said Star Trek.
I did see
they did a.
I did see the Gold Key comics.
Yeah.
Of? I don't know.
No, you mean
Macbeth. Classic comics.
Classic comics, yeah.
Yeah, so I did see that. That was interesting.
Yeah, I made a fortune out of the Hamlet comic.
Did you?
We were studying it at school, and every kid wanted to read it, and so they didn't have to read the play. And of course, I'd charge them.
Naturally, yeah.
I'd charge them each time, and
There were things like crib books at newsagents.
We didn't.
To buy.
They came later. They came later.
Okay.
Yeah, they came later for us. My generation, anyway.
Well, we had, because a lot of kids had trouble with Shakespeare. It's one of those things.
To read or not to read? That is the question.
Well, you either get it. When you get it, you get excited by it, and that's it. It's infectious. But if you don't get it, you're always going to have trouble with it.
Yeah.
Luckily, you'll never ever see a Shakespeare play ever in your life if you're that negative about it. So you won't be bothered by it too much. It does, though, actually filter into pop culture because The Tempest was in a science fiction film called Forbidden Planet. And I think Robbie played the...
Oh, well, so many, like, West Side Story is based on Romeo and Juliet,
Yeah, so it does filter into popular culture. And all of our swear words come from William Shakespeare. So, 90% of the swear words, probably, not all of them.
I doubt that. Where'd you get that fact from?
Wiki.
Oh, well, must be true then. Huh.
So most of our puns and like the way that you put people down and things and insults and things
he was a great punster.
Comes from William Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So that's how it. It's the richest. One thing about William Shakespeare, the thing that strikes you pretty much in the face, is how wonderful the English language is. When you get somebody wielding the English language with such aplomb and such delicate variety as William Shakespeare, you get really, really impressed and excited. English is a weird language. They call it a bastard tongue.
Many fathers and many mothers.
Yes. So, it's sort of made up of German and French and Saxon and Norman and
it pinches words all over the place.
Yeah. Latin and Italian, Spanish, and you name it.
It's got the biggest dictionary. It's double the size of the closest dictionary.
Yeah. So, and it's got a lot of humour, and this guy is responsible for a lot of that. Sort of
he invented
English language was
thousands of new words too. Thousands of new words. Besides his puns and his dirty jokes and all those insults he put in there. But who was it? I'm just trying to think. In Australia, we have the Bell Shakespeare Company, and the bloke who started at Bell, he said he's once asked what's so great about Shakespeare. And he basically says, well, he asks all the most important questions and he never gives you answers. He allows you to sort of come up with the answers.
Right.
And so the plays are written in such a way that all these things are brought, all these questions are brought up and they're sort of attempted to answer them, but not really. It's like the Merchant of Venice. For instance, in Shakespeare's time, everybody was anti-Jewish, everybody. And they reckon that Shakespeare didn't like him either. But if you don't know the story, he
asked for a pound of flesh.
Yeah, this Christian bloke borrows money off him. And he says, if you don't give it back, I demand a pound of flesh. And of course, if you take a pound of flesh off anybody, they're going to be...
Not well.
That's right, to say the least. Anyway, so it all comes up to the court case at the end because it doesn't go right for the Christian, and the Jew demands his pound of flesh. And of course, in the process of the court case, you realise that...
Sherlock is making an example of him.
Well, no, but you just realise the inconsistency between
Jews and non-Jews.
That's right, and how we're very similar. And I remember when I was at school, I went to Essendon Tech, and we had to do the Merchant of Venice, and we'd sit in a classroom and we had a music teacher teaching us because we didn't have enough English teachers. So he just organised us to read the parts, and the kid who got to play Shylock, he got sick and didn't keep on turning up, so I played the role. And at the end of each reading every day, that's all we did with English, he didn't do anything else, he just read this thing. He would ask questions, and everybody in the class hated. He's the bad guy, he's the cowboy with the black hat, But
Shylock.
But by the end of the play, because we discussed it after it, everybody thought he was maligned. You know, he was sort of like a strange sort of hero, and the kids couldn't, you know, because it's my mates sort of, that was new to them, that, you know, it wasn't that simple, you know, and Shakespeare's like that, you know, and of course he loves writing for the bad guys. Some of the best lines in Shakespeare are all coming out of the bad guys' mouths, you know.
Yeah. Well, the bad guys are there by, you know, some other forces at work usually.
Yeah.
You know.
So tell me about when you were in
Macbeth.
first form doing Richard III by yourself.
No, I had a company of.
Yeah, but you started this
students.
company?
Yeah.
Okay, in first form.
Yeah.
You must, and the teachers helped you, or what? What they?
Yeah, we had a theatre. It was part of it was a lunchtime play.
Okay.
So we needed some of the scenes, not all of them, obviously, because it's a 3-hour journey.
So
I liked it. It was good.
So most people. So that was your first.
Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So
and how come you
I
didn't
played
go on?
several parts in amateur productions. I played Oberon, Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
And these are like little snippets. They're not full plays.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy to do a full play and learn all those lines. Of course, it's just a hard job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's good fun. You know, it's, there's something about Shakespeare that makes it. It's unlike anything else you've experienced. It has a rhythm in it that is very enticing, and you actually get a really good impression of the power of the English language when you read Shakespeare. And even people like German people, you know, French people, they find a new love for English through Shakespeare. So it's a universal ad for England.
Well, yeah, but also Russia, Germany, France, all these countries claim Shakespeare for their own. They really do. He is a universal. He's loved
because the stories that he tells have relevant issues. They plug into a relevant, social stories, legends, myths and legends, and politics, and age-old tales and new. There's sort of like a universal language in a way, because a lot of the intrigues and things, they just keep happening. They just it's part of the human psyche, human behaviour.
Well, in my lifetime, in the education system in Australia, in the last 50 years, especially about 40 years ago, they tried to get rid of Shakespeare off the syllabus.
Yeah.
And then in the last 20 years, they've brought out all these films that he's actually, as you were saying, has become a popular culture icon. And, Shakespeare in Love, and there's so many versions of Hamlet out there. And, and of course now on stage they have all
There's
women
even a
versions.
Mel Gibson version of Hamlet.
Yeah, which is not too bad actually. The Franco Zeffirelli version, it was not bad. Yeah. Surprisingly good. Yeah, but that Franco Zeffirelli also did the Taming of the Shrew with Richard Burton and Liz Taylor, which was beautiful, sumptuous thing.
Yeah.
But now they have versions of Taming of the Shrew where the whole cast is are women.
Yeah.
And a lot of women have played.
They also have Aboriginal versions in
an African
in a Koori language.
Yeah, an African.
Yeah.
Love the hair.
So it's
what colour hair do you reckon he had?
They're international. You would have black. So they're international. He's one of the first Goths Because he grew up in a Puritan society that was very...
Well, it was a dodgy society he grew up in. You know, because...
but it was very anti-Catholic.
No, he wasn't. Where do you get all this stuff from?
Well,
he was a
Elizabethan
Catholic.
England.
He was a Catholic.
Elizabethan England was very anti-Catholic.
But that doesn't mean he was a Catholic. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa.
The times were not...
The times were changing. They were changing.
Yeah, but they're not happy times for Catholics.
No, they weren't. No. That's right. And but there's a huge, huge industry of books about Shakespeare. And there's all the ones that sort of interpret his text, and there's all the ones that sort of say that he didn't write it, and and that there's all this there's all this coding in his works, secret coding in his works that are sort of criticising the government and all sorts of stuff, and they try and connect him to the overthrow of England, the Guy Fawkes thing, all sorts of stuff, you know. But I don't know. I think that all the stuff that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare. I think it doesn't matter. We've got the plays. The play's the thing.
Yeah.
You know. But I think most of that's based on class, because, you know, how could a bloke like him write such wonderful plays? He wasn't educated like, other people, you know, like Marlowe and all those people at the time. I like the piercing look you've given him. I like the piercing look you've given him. Yeah,
but why then has why is his work loved by people of
because it's
all classes?
It's universal.
Right.
It's universal.
So doesn't that say that he could have written the plays because they're universal?
No, but I mean, like all the books. There's hundreds of books about, you know, the real Shakespeare and all that sort of stuff. He made sure that not much was known about him. You know, he sort of covered his tracks as much as he could. I mean, so people, you know, it's like what happened after Hamlet died. People have written novels and plays and all sorts of stuff about continuing on the story. There's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't stop there.
What's his name in Guildenstern?
Yeah, and there's a comic, Who Killed Shakespeare, where all these characters from his different plays are actually caught up in the political turmoil of the time. And I only read the first one, but he keeps on meeting different characters he wrote about. It's a journey through Shakespeare. I mean, he's become the stuff of the stuff
that dreams are made of.
But he's actually become the subject matter of plays, radio shows,
kind of like
poems, everything. You know,
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Oh God,
that's a thing.
And of course, we in our everyday speech we use all these expressions that he first coined. You know.
Yeah, such as.
All the glisters is not gold. He wrote glisters, but everybody says glistens. You know, I'm not such an expert on Shakespeare. I'm more interested in you, of all people. So how come you didn't go on to do theatre? Because you couldn't be bothered reading lines. And tell me about Macbeth.
Macbeth?
Yeah, you did Macbeth. Who'd you play?
I didn't do Macbeth. I studied Macbeth.
Oh, yeah.
And I was too little at the time in first form. The reason why I did
Orson Welles
was because
Welles did Macbeth when he was 10.
I had a part in their play Macbeth, the school play, and I couldn't project. So they couldn't hear me across the quadrangle.
Oh.
So I got a bit pissed off with that and decided, well, I'll put on my own bloody play and I'll practice projection.
Oh, yeah?
That's what I did. Yeah. So I did Richard III, which was at the time that I thought was.
So that's because of the film. That's because of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, every man and their dog tries to put their own tweak on Shakespeare's plays.
There's a lot of, yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of flexibility with because the things that subjects human misbehaviour, greed, and it's all passions like greed, selfishness, love, envy, all of the 7 deadly sins type of thing. They're all universal themes, and because of that, it translates across cultures, which is very interesting. It takes with it English, so even if you're doing the play in Russian, you're still reading it in English a lot of the time, and appreciating how flexible and poetic the language is. So it's English is what they call a living language rather than languages that are sort of tied up and sort of stagnant. They can't sort of grow with new vocabulary. The English dictionary, they have to get rid of words every year, otherwise it'll just be huge. The problem that the dictionary people have is they have to actually edit words out to make room for new words because it grows.
But not for the big Oxford. They just keep adding them. You've got the short of Oxford, and you've got all these other dictionaries which sort of... Yeah, I mean, they use words that are coming into usage, like 50 years ago the word software wasn't in dictionaries,
Yeah.
Firewall, all this stuff,
Yeah, and also...
COVID-19, all those sort of things,
Also, pop culture references here and there. It's part of the... it's part and parcel of the English language.
But there is this phenomenon that different cultures, like for instance, outside of England, Germany is the world experts on Shakespeare. Did he write any plays set in Germany? I don't think he did.
No, Hamlet's Danish.
Yeah.
There's just there's universal themes. They're universal themes. That's why people liked it.
Yeah, but they just love him, and they take him as if he is a German. If he is, he's one of them. He's one of them, And of course, people have. I mean, he survived. There's so many people who've written plays, great plays that It's like Bach. One of the great composers of all time, he had to be rediscovered because he'd fallen, hardly anybody ever heard of him, But Shakespeare's always been,
Well, Bach was he was like the harpsichords or something that he wrote for. Was kind of locked to those particular instruments. They had a particular sound.
No, not really. I'm just saying that it's a phenomenon. It's like, we were talking about recently about Hitchcock, I mean, when some of his greatest films came out, they were bombed, they bombed. And that happens with a lot of films and writings. They don't find their audience at the time, But Shakespeare did. He found his audience. Like, I recently went and saw a version of the Globe Theatre, a smaller version they had in Melbourne, and and of course you have the groundlings where people stand, and it started to rain.
So it's a round stage, is it? Or
you started to get wet because it's all open, and the actors were sort of looking at you while they can see you, you can see them. It's not like an ordinary theatre where the audience is in the dark. And when they give their speeches, they grab someone in the audience with their look and they just look at them while they're giving their speech.
It's very intense.
And everybody, all the people around, like if they're looking at you, for instance, all the people around you
look at you.
Yeah. There's this thing going on. And of course, when the soldiers all turn up for a battle or something, they all come through the crowd and they're pushing all the audience away, you know, and all this sort of stuff. And there's a really connection. And of course, in the old days, people milked it. You know what I mean? Like some actors milked it. You know, and they were so popular with the crowd. You know, mind you, there were pickpockets and all sorts of stuff. They end up stopping it because of the plague. Yeah.
Oh, people weren't social distancing enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's how I mean, people love stories. There must have been really interesting and very intense experiences in order for it to be so popular with so many different classes.
Well, you know, if you see a really good version of King Lear, it's wrenching. It's wrenching. He goes from, he's a complete idiot, but so much things happen to him that, you know, it's just, and to do that on stage, it must be incredibly exhausting. You come away, you know, I think he touches on great depths of our human nature, of the humanity. He's the great humanist, you know, and he doesn't push things. He doesn't push things. He sort of, he explores things. And
he doesn't stylize the characters?
Well, he doesn't. He's not a. He's interested in everything, and what he does with his writing, he sort of explores it, but he never sort of takes sides. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Never takes sides.
That's interesting.
And he allows the reader to sort of
make his own.
Yeah, conclusions. And of course, you that helps you bond with Shakespeare. You know what I mean?
Well, it's that flexibility that I think is like the you know, it's an everlasting experience, because it's something you are personally connected with. You're invested in the story personally. I think that makes it sort of a stronger stronger read. You know, and you remember the story. The other thing too, a lot of books that you read, you think, you know, and they Catcher in the Rye, you know, which I absolutely hate, and
you actually read the whole lot.
Yeah, and even Dracula, I don't care for it either. Frankenstein was a complete unreadable. So yeah, you know, Lord of the Flies. Yuck. So a lot of stories are really forgettable, and you know, novels and things, they're just sort of like, but Shakespeare is just that something about it. The characters really stand out very, very three-dimensionally in your mind, whereas all of the other characters don't.
Also, he wrote great roles for women when no one else was. You know, like Portia. She's terrific. She actually pretends to be a male judge in the Merchant of Venice, you know, and she's got some great lines.
Yeah.
And of course, there's this whole thing about in Shakespeare's day, women weren't allowed to be on the stage, so men had to play women, and so everybody knew that. So Shakespeare messed around with that old idea with in the actual plot lines, in the plot lines of his plays.
Right,
know?
Have people.
Well, people got dressed up as they changed sexes.
Okay, yeah,
pretending and all that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah, so it became part of the storyline. Yeah.
So he was putting plays within plays within plays within plays, you know. Oh, you really got him looking at you. It's got that. He's caught you in his stare.
Yeah, well, I think he, you know, look, whatever you hear about Shakespeare, whether you believe it or not, you know, if he was just an impresario or like a genius writer or whatever, it doesn't really matter in the end. We don't know. But,
well, it doesn't matter. We've got the plays. That's all that matters.
Yeah. So, you know, we know that he had something to do with them. And we're sort of like saying, well, they're Shakespeare plays.
Yeah, he had something to do with them. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
Shakespeare had something to do with them. Yeah.
I mean, there is evidence that he did, he was clever because he was knighted and stuff, probably.
Was he?
I guess he would have been at the time.
No, I don't think he was.
He was popular at court.
I think you've read the different comics to me.
Yeah, I probably read different comics.
He was popular at court.
But Sir William...
He wasn't a Sir William.
He's probably knighted posthumously.
Well,
If he wasn't, they definitely
Judi
should
Dench
be.
liked him, and she was the queen in Shakespearean Love. What's your favourite play of Shakespeare's?
I would say Macbeth. Macbeth sort of just rings out with truth.
It's a bloody dark play, that.
Yeah, but I like it. I like it.
I like Hamlet, and I like...
Yeah, Hamlet's good, but
and
Hamlet's a little too stagey. I think,
Stagey.
yeah, like, in the graveyard and in the parapets and things and seeing ghosts and all that sort of stuff. But the ghosts in Macbeth are visceral. They're sort of like filthy and rotting and, they're sort of...
Are you coming at from an EC
Yeah.
experience or,
Yes,
or a Hammer
absolutely.
horror experience,
Hammer horror.
Yeah, Hammer never did Shakespeare, did they?
Well, there's a certain amount of Shakespeare and Dracula pouncing around parapets. This is Will. This is Will Shakespeare.
Yes.
And this is my version of Will Shakespeare. And this is Frantz Kantor, and I'm here with...
Jim Bridges, and we'll see you on the...
parapets? No. On the flip side.
Okay.
Bye-bye.